Welcome to Therapy, Coaching, and Dreams. My name is Dee Kelly. Jim Shalley is here with me.
My name is Jim Shalley, and I'm here with Dee Kelly.
We are exploring, as always, the inner landscape of personality and talk about therapy, coaching, and dreams, and try and bring some insights to people's journey and tools that they might use to grow and reflect and find new pathways of exploration in their own life. I'd like this week, Jim, actually to do a Q&A. Several questions coming in from listeners and others that have listened to what we have talked about and would like some additional insight, and all of them are directed toward you, which is great. That's very convenient for me.
I don't think that's not convenient for me.
Well,
So do you have the book of answers with you that you could kind of like share with me?
I have intentionally not told you these questions ahead of time.
Okay, well, this will be fun.
The second four all have to do with the STIR model that we've talked about, so we'll come back to those in a few moments. The first three are just specifically about therapy questions that people have some curiosities, and I wonder if some of the questions relate to individuals who maybe are considering a vocational movement toward being a therapist. At least that's what it feels like a little bit. So one of the first questions is, what does it mean to be licensed? They've noticed that sometimes a person refers to being a licensed therapist. Can you explain what that might mean? Is it different from state to state? What might a person be referring to when they list that as one of their credentials as being a therapist?
Yeah. Yeah, most states, if not all states, I think require, a license to practice any kind of therapy. 25, 30 years ago, a lot of people would hang out a shingle and do some therapy, and then they started regulating it because, you didn't have to have any training or anything in some states. But now almost every state has to have some form of license, either a doctoral level license or a master's level license. In Illinois, you have to have a license to be able to have a practice. You can't own a practice if you don't have a license. So, and there's different levels. There's LCSW, which is a licensed clinical social worker. There's a licensed clinical professional counselor. There's different levels of license as well. But most states require a degree, and then you have to take a licensing exam.
So when you say a degree, there are obviously some educational requirements. Right. You mentioned some type of testing, so there is a culminating test that everybody has to take and pass.
Right. Yeah, you have to get, for my license, in the state of Illinois, I had to have 2,000 hours of practicum or providing services. And then
supervised, correct.
Yeah. And then you set for the licensing exam.
Great. So you mentioned that state to state. Are there restrictions that keep you from practicing across state lines? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you had a client that lives in Arizona or somewhere, you'd have to get some certification from that state in order to be able to bill for insurance reasons to practice in that state. And a lot of states are reciprocal, but some still require you to take some kind of an exam to be on their state licensing board.
Okay.
Now, it did get a little bit, this is kind of anecdotal, but it did get a little bit complicated with COVID because a lot of people were traveling, and even therapists would travel, and they would still be billed out of their state of origin. And I think it's been a little bit lax because of COVID and how people traveled so much during that period of time. So, but again, just to clear it up, most states absolutely require a license to be able to be a licensed therapist. Sometimes some states will allow you to do like spiritual counseling or pastoral counseling in that sense and not have to be licensed.
Okay. So just one point of clarification. When there is a restriction or practicing across a state line, is it the law that you can't do that unless you're licensed, or is it only a requirement for insurance billing that necessitates that? And I'm just using an example. If somebody's paying cash and they're calling you up from another state, is that an issue legally, ethically, or neither?
That's a great question, and I'm not an expert in it, but, my guess would be if they filed a complaint with their state, then so say something happened in therapy and they wanted to file a complaint, and they were from, let's say, Indiana, and I'm in Illinois. Could they file a complaint in Illinois, or would they file it in Indiana? Well, they filed in Indiana. I'm not licensed to practice in Indiana, so there'd be more of liability in that case.
Okay. So it's really not just an insurance issue.
Right,
It
no,
has
it's
to do with a liability issue.
absolutely, right.
Yeah. Okay, very helpful. On a different
And
topic,
that's what again, on another note, that's why a lot of people have gone to coaching because
because
coaching
there's far fewer restrictions.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And there has developed over the years educational protocol, but
yes,
it's not
certifications,
tightly regulated,
no,
so there are several governing bodies, but there aren't state qualifying
right,
situations. So, yeah, it's a little bit more loosey-goosey, certainly, the coaching field
absolutely.
is. Yeah,
Yeah, like if I were to shift from doing therapy and using insurance and being licensed to go to coaching, yeah, then I would just charge cash and
yeah.
there's no I could do whatever I want. So
Well, it will be interesting as the years pass if there are more lawsuits that relate to the
absolutely true.
coaching profession, then you know that it's going to begin to shift.
And that's why they stay away from therapy language altogether in coaching.
Yeah.
It's about matter of fact, what can I help you do? That's why it's more business related because it becomes very cognitive in the sense that, I want to accomplish these goals. Okay, let's set up an action step. That would be the difference between coaching. Whereas therapy is more in depth as far as the person's journey and story.
Yeah. So that's a great bridge for the next question when you use the term in depth. Are there dramatic differences between how therapists are trained, like educationally, even their practicums, but I'm thinking more specifically educationally? Is and how would I know as a consumer? Maybe those are two separate questions. First, is there a dramatic difference between how different training programs, different universities, and what education is required?
As
And then
far as coaching,
secondly, how do I know what I need if there are
as
those
as
differences?
far as coaching and therapy, or what, or
No, no,
just
no, therapists.
okay.
Like I'm going to go to a university and get an educational background to become a therapist. Are there dramatic differences between going to this school and going to some other school over here?
That's again a really interesting question because are you going to do cognitive therapy? What kind of therapy do you want to do? I'm not an expert in all the universities what they or what they offer. Most of them offer a degree in clinical psychology or a research things like that. But if they're offering a a, a master's program in counseling psychology, it's pretty standard as far as what they will offer, an overview of all the different schools of thought when it comes to training in psychology. Like for me, a long time ago, I was trained in at the Adlerian School. So it was after Alfred Adler and his theories, which rang true for me. So I was trained in that sense. If you want, to be a behaviorist or
Ecodynamic theory.
psychodynamic, you'll specialize in any of those that ring true for your own style. But the general degree, like a psychology degree undergraduate, would be one thing. The master's degree would be a master's degree of counseling psychology or in some other form. And then if you want to get the doctorate, that's a different level of training.
Yeah. And then even within each one of those, somebody may decide to zero in and specialize in adolescent psychology,
Right. Or abnormal
developmental,
or forensic, anything like that.
or family systems.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very
And
helpful.
there are lots of schools, like some do specific training for marriage counseling. They'll do specifically, they'll really zero in on that.
Yeah.
It just depends on your own individual interest.
So one of the ways by which you determine, like in the before you ever meet a therapist, probably some wisdom if they have a website to go and see if they write up what their special area of interest is to see if it fits with the things that you think you need.
Yes, like on my website, I have a basic overview of my education and my background, what my specialties are. So that's really important as far as choosing a therapist.
Okay, great. Thank you. I
And it's a
appreciate your
it's a wide range of people that do therapy. Some advertise them as being, more faith-based therapists. Others are completely non-faith, but it's just a wide range
yeah.
of possibilities. Yeah,
One of the things that I always encourage individuals who are considering therapy is to go in with a list of questions you have of the therapist
that's great.
during that opening session that's often free. It's a brief session, but it's kind of an intake for the therapist, but it's also an opportunity for the client to ask several questions to make sure that there's at least some kind of level of fit. So that's what I encourage people who are seeking out a therapist to do.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Because, you know, you should be if I'm the customer, I want that good fit. And it may be a referral, like, at this point in my career, I only take new cases that are referred to me by a colleague of mine that I have agreed with that I will take them. So they have a pretty good sense of my style when they get referred to me by that person. And so there isn't as many questions asked because they trust their therapist who's referred
Yeah.
them to me in some way, so or word of mouth is always another thing. If a friend has referred someone to me, that cuts down sometimes on those questions because they trust their friend.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like it's a self-screening mechanism. If you
Right.
have a friend, you're familiar with what their needs are, and if it fits what your needs are, then it helps get through that first layer of questions that you might have.
Yeah.
Um, we're going to shift a little bit. I've got four questions that have come in here that relate to the STIRM model, and for those who are relatively new listeners, it's a approach to personality that we use that talks about both the masculine and feminine expressions that are in all of us. And it looks at a dynamic and static energy that is within all of us and results in four broadly based approaches to how an individual lives out their life, that we have access to all of them, but we have a bent toward one of those four. And the first one in this STIR acronym is the stabilizer, which is a static masculine energy. The T is the transformer, the I is the initiator, and the R is a responder. So this first question relates to that model. And it's actually something that we touched on in another episode, and maybe for some this would be a reminder, but for others they would not have heard that episode. And it is a question about, is there any relationship between your bent toward one of those personality styles and your birth order? Are firstborns more likely something one style than another? Are lastborns, is there no relationship, or have you even thought of
I haven't thought about it at all.
that? Not
There's no
true.
relationship at all. That's a really good point. I would say firstborns are typically rule followers, initiators, and caregivers, so they would be like initiator, responder. Typically, if I had to kind of pull that out, geez, Transformers probably a lastborn because they're pretty carefree naturally. Not say that I know anything about that. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Middle children, they probably are more likely to be stabilizers,
Okay. How about
and
an
maybe
only child?
an only child probably would be. I'll really. I'll just say they're all of them.
Yeah, yeah.
It would depend on how they're parented. Again, that's the other aspect because parents will react to each of those birth orders differently in some ways, which helps develop them. an only child, if they're not given access to other kids, sleepovers or whatever they are, they'll be raised differently in that sense. But that'll be interesting to give some thought to that, because I would say birth order is fascinating as far as how it helps play out your personality.
So, tie this in, this is a great bridge to the next question, to how your family of origin molds you. And I think you were starting to go down this pathway. Generally speaking, parents are different with a firstborn. It's all new to them as parents than they are with a second, third, fourth born. And there is a tendency for new parents to kind of live into what they observed in their growing up as opposed to learning new methodology. I'm very surprised by my two grown children. They have so much access to information that I never had as a parent. Like, it's so available to them, and they are aware of current theories, current trends, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, nutrition, not nutrition, how you discipline, all of those kinds of things. It was just hit and miss. What no, not literally hit and miss. No, that's
Okay,
not what
that's
I
good.
meant.
Yeah, we need to qualify that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd miss hitting them. Oh, that's not good. Yeah.
So, playing this out, let's say if we believe that people have kind of a natural bias to a particular personality style that doesn't fit very well within a particular family system, that family of origin is going to reward or punish certain behaviors that might be associated with, like, you didn't use this term, but the freewheeling kind of style of a transformer that both playful and doesn't pay attention to rules often, or thinks that they're there as guidelines instead of rules. If that doesn't fit well within a family of origin system, that can get squelched.
Mhm.
And so as they grow up, they can rebel through, kind of the years where you're individuating from your family. There can be acting out behavior and all kinds of things, or there can be compliance, and it all gets pushed down.
Yeah, there's so many aspects to that question. For example, and I this is all anecdotal, I have no sup
Research?
research support for
Yeah.
this, but for example, if you had to do a study, how many firstborns are transformers?
Mm.
I would say hardly any, because of the dynamic of the firstborn, the parenting style, the newness of it all. The parents are more nervous, they're more rigid about things, so the child is gonna react to that. On the other hand, some kids come out and they're just difficult from day one. They demand a lot of attention, they're colicky, all those terms that people have used to try to describe the natural intent of a child. But I would say most firstborns are probably compliant, rule followers, who are used to taking charge of things. I would say lastborns are probably more likely to be transformers because the parents are either tired, exhausted, or they're just like, "Geez, here's the keys to the house. Do what you want," because because they're tired. So their energy is different, and it's always fascinating from that perspective as to what. And I've always contended too that when it comes to the true development of the ongoing personality of a child, it has more to do with the rub of the siblings than it does the parenting style. Because let's say the firstborn is really good at academics, and the second child believes on some level I can't compete, so I'll become a good athlete, and I won't necessarily work hard at academics. Or I'm more naturally smart than my firstborn, so I'll dethrone that firstborn to become smarter than them. You never know, but that rub, I think, goes a long way in addressing how a child ultimately defines themselves. Which is it's a fascinating question about, nature, nurture, what comes first, what goes into it. A rigid parent will demand perfection from a child, so then the child becomes anxious and perfectionistic. That it plays itself out in adult world because the parent has imposed too much of their style onto the kid. All that. So full circle, it's so important as best you can to understand your own biases in raising children so that you can actually help them secure who they are naturally as opposed to who you want them to be.
I think in the midst of parenting, sometimes it's difficult to be that conscious when you're just simply trying to survive the day.
Absolutely true. It's like, "Oh, yeah, that's a nice theory, Jim." You know, live in the real world. Yeah, absolutely.
But I do think as they grow up and there's a little more space in your head and time in your day to think and reflect, it's not a matter of correcting everything that maybe you didn't do well, but it is giving your children permission to say that maybe they didn't like how it was,
Mm.
permission to acknowledge that some things may could have been done better, and encouragement to say, my goodness, explore. Like if you felt squelched in this area and you're interested in it, explore it. I think that's a gift you give yourself as a parent because you're kind of freeing up not only your children, but you're freeing up yourself and saying, please explore and be and grow whatever you want to do, as well as freeing for your child to not feel bound by conversations that they're very reluctant to have or difficult to have. And I know that's not easy to do because
Not
you
at all.
often you,
Right.
you take it personally. I get that.
Yeah.
But I think that that can be a valuable gift to yourself as well as to your children.
Yeah, one of the most valuable lessons to keep on learning is to not personalize things.
Mm,
But it is
yeah,
it is so hard when your kid is critiquing you and you think, "Well, wait a minute, I had to do that because of who you were."
that's
Yeah.
right. You, and you're old enough to have some pretty quick retorts right handy in your head, just
Absolutely,
ready to let it come out.
absolutely true.
We have often used a phrase that I would like to suggest a slight paraphrase for parenting. When we've talked about relationships that we are in, we've used that line, do you want to be right or do you want to be in a relationship?
Mhm.
And giving deference to that thing that keeps you in relationship as opposed to trying to be right. I feel like in parenting, that is also absolutely true. But I feel like maybe the paraphrase could be, do you want to win or do you want to be in a relationship? Because often that
That's great.
dynamic has this winning feel to it.
Yep. Absolutely, yep.
And so I think if you just change that one word and then apply it to the journey you have with your children, that can help you at least guide a little bit your journey.
Mhm. And
But the
it's like a cooperative phrase could be, "N none of us know what we don't know."
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna end. We had a couple more questions, but we're getting close on the end of time here. Let me close with this one. The aging process we've talked about in several episodes, but here's how the question comes in relationship to the STIR model. If we move from having a leaning toward a particular style to growing into this awareness of all four styles within us and trying to learn how to tap into those parts of who we are when it's needed. Like when I
Mhm.
need the initiator to step up and get me moving, when I need the stabilizer to get me patterned and systems that work. You go through all four of them. If that's the movement toward health, when we get older, we often think of old patterns, old ruts coming back, and we get back into those old patterns again. If we are not wanting to retreat back to those old patterns as we age,
Yeah.
how do we sustain that growth? I guess is the question. Any thoughts?
Oh, man. I think if you've genuinely this is my own bias, but if you've genuinely grown to a deeper understanding of yourself, you notice a pattern pretty quickly, and so you stay pretty motivated. Now, again, the outlier is always a sickness or physical limitations. Those things can certainly help resist the growth, and you may fall back into a pattern of self-care that I think is driven by survival, depending on the level of conditioning. But I think it's like, if you're the other side of it is, though, you could become pretty comfortable with your pattern, and you've learned how to make it functional.
Well,
So,
that's a great
okay.
point.
So, hey, "Oh, that's what I do when I do this." Okay, that's true. When I get under stress, I do this. Does that mean I'm not growing? No, I understand it, but I'm okay with it. It's like you don't have to change the pattern. It's really becoming aware of the effect the pattern has and what do you do with it when it shows up.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
It does. I'd love for you to just say it one more time. You can use the exact words or expand on it,
Well, if I
but
can remember the exact word.
I just thought that was very good. It's this notion of if growth has led you to greater self-awareness, it's that self-awareness that holds you steady into the future, not necessarily having,
Great changes, yeah,
yeah,
because those patterns are so hard to ultimately just really change without a trauma or a significant event to make it happen. It's like if I know me, if I go into a big group where I don't know many people, I'm gonna be pretty shy, I'm gonna be pretty reserved. I'm never gonna go into that meeting and go, "Hey, how you doing? What's up?" I'm never gonna be that guy, and I'm okay with that. Do I wish at some point in my life do I wish I would have been a little different than that? Absolutely, but I also know a last born trait is they go in and they assess the dynamic. If they're not if they're not so extroverted that they just go in and take over, which is the other side of it. But yeah, no, to think that, okay, this time I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna be this guy, why would I wanna do that? So it's really being self-aware and saying, "I'm okay with it." And not resent it because you would like to be, but you're not, and then you keep acting as if I should be. It's kinda like if an introvert thinks they should be an extrovert, and every time they keep thinking, "Why can't I be more like that person?" Wait a minute, you're not that person, you're an introvert. It's like, it's
yeah.
okay.
I love as you describe that and you move into a group setting, it's easy if somebody calls you out on being reserved for your
Mhm,
defenses to go up.
mhm.
But if you are self-aware, you can hear that as that person's projection and not your stuff.
Absolutely true.
To me, that is incredible growth and health. So like you said, you're living into your bent or your kind of preferred style, but you're doing it with this raised awareness that keeps your defenses low, which keeps you incredibly human.
Absolutely. It would be like another example would be, I know that in those group settings, if I'm standing by myself, I don't mind it if someone comes up and engages in conversation with me. And so I'll see somebody, if they're standing by themselves, I may initiate that and go over and talk because my guess is that's where they're at too. And
Mm,
they don't mind the conversation, but they're not going to initiate it.
yeah, yeah. Great place
Anyway,
for us to stop.
yeah.
Jim, this has been a great Q&A. Thank you for letting me drill down on a few of these things, and thanks for
Well, hopefully I
those
made some sense about all those questions about being a therapist and all that, because it does, again, depend on the state to state stuff. So
yeah, I think you did. Great to be with you, and we'll be
good to be
back
with
next
you.
week. For those who are listening, if you have questions, certainly throw them out there. We will do our best to address them as we move forward. But look forward to being with you in another week. See you, Jim.
Cool. See you, D. Yeah, no, it's good stuff.